Let's create a teleport mechanism. You can even use the mouse scroll wheel to increase or decrease the distance. So what we're going to do is, we start by adding some shapes to reference our tracing points and direction. We create a system to decide whether we can teleport or not. Then we set the rotation of a cube to be the way we're facing. We perform a series of line traces to get the necessary location to teleport. Then we add a button to teleport our character. Start by opening your character's blueprint. Add a cube and scale it down. Also, make sure to turn off the collision. Then, duplicate the cube and set it to be a sphere. Call it Begin Trace. Duplicate the sphere and move it up. Call this one Down Trace. You can choose whether you want to use a cylinder, texture, or particle for your teleport effect. I will use a particle in this video from the FX Variety Pack. I would recommend having it at a scale where your character will fit in, not bigger or smaller. The location to put it in won't matter, since its location will be set in our code. Give it a relevant name. Then go to your event graph and in the Begin Play code, hide the particle. Choose what button you want to use to activate your teleport ability and create two bool variables. One will be used to check if our ability is on, and the second will check whether we're allowed to teleport to the given location. Now, instead of using a flip-flop, connect the code like I do. So checking whether our variable is true or false and setting it to be the opposite. This is a good flip-flop alternative. Video on that later. Set the teleport effect to be hidden when turning off the ability. Setting it to be visible is not essential here, but rather a backup. Add a tick node and check whether our ability is turned on. Add a set world rotation node and connect the cube. Split the value. Get base aim rotation and connect the X and Z. Now when we turn on the ability, the cube will follow our camera's rotation. For testing purposes, I will allow our ability to be on by default, so we won't have to press the button. We will be creating a bunch of line traces, and things might get a little confusing, but in order for the teleport ability to be accurate, we need to do it like this. So our first line trace will be from our cube to the Begin Trace. You can choose to turn on the trace visibility for testing purposes, but it's not required. Next, add a branch and a break hit result. This trace is checking whether we are aiming at a wall or not. Copy the line trace and connect the Begin Trace to our start. Duplicate it and split the values. This trace is aiming down from our end result and making sure we set the teleport effect on the ground and not in the air. The higher you set the value, the further down you're allowed to teleport. Add another branch and break hit result and connect the blocking hit. Using the teleport effect as reference, drag out a set world location node and connect the impact to the location. Get a set visibility node and set it to be visible. Set the can teleport to be true. Parent the Begin Trace and Down Trace to the cube. So now the trace is checking whether we're hitting a wall, and if we aren't, it will trace downwards to check whether there's a floor. If there is, it will set the teleport effect there and allow us to teleport. On the false, set the visibility to be hidden and can teleport variable to be false. We will need another cube to move on. Call it Move Cube and move it somewhere. Now, let's add code to decide what happens if we hit a wall. Add a set world location node and connect the Move Cube. Connect the impact point to the location. Add another line trace. Use the Move Cube's world location as the start and the forward vector multiplied by 70. Add it with the start location. What this trace does, since the previous trace end will end up on the outside of our wall, we need the trace to go a little bit more inside, so when we teleport, we don't end up on the edge. Add a break hit and set the world location node connected to a down trace. Split the location value and the trace end value, and add 500 to the Z value. Connect the X and Y. This will set up our second sphere to be 500 units above our trace. If you want your character to be able to teleport higher or lower than this, feel free to add more or less. Then add another line trace and use the down trace as start. Split the end and get another world location connected to the down trace. Add something small like 30 to the Z. This trace is checking whether we are inside a wall or not, so if we are, we will not be able to teleport. You guessed it, add another break hit and a branch. Then, on the false, add a sphere trace by channel. Set the radius to around 50 or 60. You can use a line trace here as well, but the idea is to prevent issues when teleporting on uneven ground. Use the down trace as start and split the end. Like we did before, duplicate and split. And set the Z to be -500. I added the wrong line trace here, so make sure it's not a multi-line trace. Then break hit and set the visibility and location of our teleport effect. Set the can teleport to be true. Now go back to our branch and on true add another line trace. Move the cube as start and do the forward vector thing we did earlier. This trace is so if we are inside a wall, we will need to set the teleport to be outside. Then set the visibility, location, and the can teleport. Set the location to be trace end. Set our move cube to the rotation as well. Move the main cube to be down so that we trace towards the floor. The trace should work now. The only issue we have is if we jump while tracing towards a wall, the teleport effect will come up with us. You could leave it like this if you wanted to, but if not, there's one last trace we need to do. Connect the previous end to the start. Split the end. Set the Z to be -500. Break hit and connect the impact point to the previous location. Do what I do here. So now the trace will go towards the floor even if we jump. Now let's create the actual teleport. Choose what input you want to use and check whether our ability is on and if we can teleport. On true, set the teleporting variable to be false. Add a particle to indicate teleporting. Hide your character's mesh. Stop your character movement and disable input. There's something weird going on here when we get disable input from our player controller. The target is connected wrong, so change the target. Set the movement mode to flying. Turn off your capsule collision. Add a delay and hide the teleport effect. Get the teleport effect's location and promote it to a variable. Add a timeline. Set the length around 0.6 and add a float track. Shift-click on the line and set both values to 0. Repeat and set the time to 0.6 and the value to 1. On update, add a set actor location and add a lerp vector. Use your current location as start and the vector variable we created as end. but add some value to the z-axis. So we teleport a little bit above the ground. Connect the timeline value to the alpha and make sure to set it to play from start. Copy the code from the particle to the delay. Change mesh visibility to be visible. Remove the stop movement and enable input. Again, change the target. Set movement mode to be walking or falling. Set collision to be collision enabled, query and physics. Re-enable the ability code and turn off the teleporting variable. So now we can teleport. Let's create the mouse wheel distance decider. Add relative location and connect it to the begin trace. On mouse wheel up, add with around 100 and mouse wheel down, minus 100. You can also add a limiter to decide how far or how close to move the teleport. Hide the shapes we created, and if you turned on the trace visibility, turn them all off. So now everything's good. The only thing missing is our can't teleport indicator. This is optional of course, but we want our player to know that they can't teleport to X location. All you need to do here is to add an effect indicating that you can't teleport. Set it to be visible when the teleport effect is hidden, and vice versa, so hidden when the teleport effect is visible. Set its location like I do. Since the trace is going downwards, and we don't want the can't teleport effect to spawn down. Also, hide it and begin play. And you're done. An issue you might encounter if you're using a particle, it might not be visible sometimes. I don't know why this happens, but to fix it, use a child actor with a particle instead of directly in the character.